Do not add your child's name to your house deed. Not today, not ever, not for any reason they give you. That sentence right there is worth more than any estate attorney is going to charge you. Because the mistake I'm about to walk you through didn't happen to a careless person. It didn't happen to someone who skipped their homework or ignored their CPA. It happened to a man who did everything right for 43 years, and then got ambushed by a single act of love. Gerald Hoffmann is 71 years old. He lives in a 3-bedroom colonial in Akron, Ohio. His wife, Patrice, still makes her grandmother's pierogi on Sunday nights, and the smell of caramelized onions fills that house every single week like clockwork. Gerald drove a gray 2019 Silverado. He retired from Goodyear at 65 with a pension, a fully paid-off home worth $390,000, and about $680,000 in a mix of IRAs and a brokerage account. By any reasonable measure, Gerald was set. In 2022, Gerald's son, Kevin, 44, an IT manager in Columbus, sat down with his dad over Thanksgiving. Kevin had been reading. He'd seen YouTube videos, articles, Facebook posts from a financial group he followed. "Dad," Kevin said, "we need to protect the house. If something happens to you and Mom, and the government tries to take it for Medicaid, it's gone. Put my name on the deed." That's what smart people do. Gerald trusted Kevin. Kevin wasn't greedy. Kevin was trying to help. So Gerald called a document preparation service, not an estate attorney, a document prep service, paid $199, and had Kevin added as a joint tenant with right of survivorship on the deed to that Akron colonial. Done. Simple. Solved. Or so Gerald believed. What Gerald actually did, in the eyes of the IRS, in the eyes of Medicaid, in the eyes of Ohio state law, was detonate a financial landmine directly underneath the one asset that was supposed to be untouchable. He handed his son a $119,000 capital gains tax liability. He reset the 5-year Medicaid look-back clock. He exposed the home to Kevin's future creditors, his future divorce proceedings, and any judgment that a court might someday attach to Kevin's name. And here is the number that should stop you cold. If Gerald and Patrice need nursing home care, which statistically 68% of Americans over 65 will, the state of Ohio can now pursue that home through the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program for every dime they spent on that care. Every single dime. We are talking about a potential lien that could reach $400,000, $500,000, or more, on a home they spent 4 decades paying off. That is the trap, and it is snapping shut on thousands of families right now in 2026, because someone on Facebook told them adding a kid to the deed was smart. If that enrages you, good. Smash that like button right now, not because I'm asking you nicely, because every retiree who watches this video instead of making Gerald's mistake is one less family that gets harvested by a system that was designed to do exactly that. Now let's talk about the actual damage, not in theory, in dollars. Here's what most people think happens when they add their kid to the deed. Nothing. They think it's a name on a piece of paper. They think it costs nothing. They are wrong on every level. The suits at the agency want me to remind you this is not financial advice. It is a survival guide for an unguarded vault. Talk to a fiduciary CPA before you move a single dollar. Now, let's look at the real math. Gerald's house in Akron has a cost basis. That's the IRS's number, the price he originally paid plus improvements, of $87,000. He bought it in $1,989 for $74,000 and put in roughly $13,000 in renovations over the years. Today, that house is worth $390,000. Under normal circumstances, if Gerald and Patrice live in that house and sell it or pass it on at death, they are entitled to a stepped-up basis at death, which resets the cost basis to whatever the house is worth on the day they die. That means zero capital gains. Inherited by Kevin, Kevin sells it for $390,000. Kevin owes nothing to the IRS. That is the correct play, and Gerald just walked away from it. Here's what happened instead. When Gerald added Kevin to the deed as a joint tenant, he made a gift of 50% of the home's equity to Kevin. Right then, in 2022. Under IRS rules, Kevin's share does not get a stepped-up basis. Kevin's basis is calculated from Gerald's original cost basis, $87,000. 50% of which is $43,500. Kevin's share of the home's current value is $195,000. Subtract his $43,500 basis. You get $151,500 in taxable capital gain, sitting there, waiting like a knife in a drawer. If Kevin is in the 15% federal capital gains bracket, that's $22,725 owed to the IRS the moment the house sells. If he's in the 20% bracket, and at $195,000 in a lump sum gain he very well might be, that's $30,300. In Ohio, add another 4% state income tax on the gain. That's another $6,060. Now add the net investment income tax, 3.8% on gains above $250,000 combined income, and we've stacked 3 layers of tax on a transaction that should have been tax-free. Knife in the kidney, stealth tax layer 2, three-headed beast. But the capital gains problem is almost secondary. Let's talk about Medicaid, because this is where the real ambush lives. Medicaid has a 5-year look-back period. Any asset you transferred within 5 years of applying for Medicaid nursing home benefits can be clawed back or used to disqualify you. Gerald made that transfer in November 2022. His 5-year clock runs through November 2027. If Gerald or Patrice needs a nursing home before November 2027, and remember they are 71 years old, which means this is not a distant hypothetical, the transfer of half the home's equity to Kevin is flagged as a disqualifying gift. Ohio Medicaid calculates the penalty by dividing the transferred amount by the average private nursing home daily rate in Ohio, currently around $285 a day. Half the home's equity at time of transfer was approximately $181,000. Divide that by $285 and you get 634 days, over 21 months, during which Gerald and Patrice would receive 0 Medicaid coverage for nursing home care. 21 months of a nursing home at $285 a day, that is $180,390 they would have to pay out of pocket. Money that was supposed to fund the last decade of their retirement. And we haven't even gotten to the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program yet. That is Section 1917B of the Social Security Act, the federal law that requires states to recover Medicaid benefits paid on behalf of anyone over 55 from their estate after they die. Ohio participates aggressively. After Gerald passes, the state of Ohio can file a lien against the estate, including the home, for every dollar Medicaid spent on his care. We're talking about a potential recovery claim that routinely hits $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 or more for extended nursing home stays. Kevin thought he was protecting the house. He handed the state a map to it. Tell me in the comments right now, how old are you today, June 2026, and what percentage of your liquid net worth is sitting exposed in a house titled The Wrong Way? I read every single comment in the first 48 hours. Your answer might save someone else watching this thread. There's one more layer I have to show you before we get to the villain behind this trap, and this one blindsides people who think they've been careful. When Kevin's name goes on that deed, Kevin's creditors have a claim on Kevin's share. Not a theoretical claim, a real, legal, attachable claim. If Kevin gets sued, if he's in a car accident, if his business fails, if his marriage dissolves, a plaintiff's attorney or a divorce court can reach into that Akron Colonial and pull out Kevin's equity. Gerald's home, the home he and Patrice slept in for 30 years, is now partially exposed to every financial mistake Kevin ever makes for the rest of his life. That is not protection. That is a second door into your vault that you don't control. So, who built this? Who benefits from your confusion? The joint tenancy deed transfer as an estate planning tool has been around since English common law. It was designed for married couples, so the surviving spouse could hold the property seamlessly without going through probate. That is the only use case it was built for, full stop. The Medicaid Estate Recovery Framework was constructed, or more precisely weaponized, by the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993. Congress required all states to implement estate recovery programs for Medicaid recipients as a condition of receiving federal Medicaid funds. The original stated purpose was to recover from wealthy heirs who had gamed the Medicaid system. Reasonable on its face. But what it became in practice was a mechanism that traps middle-class families, families exactly like Gerald's, in a legal dragnet they never saw coming. Here is the misaligned incentive you need to understand. There is a $4.5 trillion long-term care industry in this country. There are financial products, annuities, life insurance riders, so-called Medicaid-compliant trusts sold by commission salespeople that profit enormously when you are confused about the rules. When you don't know the right move, you either do nothing, and the state harvests you, or you do the wrong thing, and the state still harvests you, just faster. Either way, someone other than you wins. The document preparation services, the $199 deed prep websites, the legal Zoom substitutes, they will take your money and hand you a deed that looks official, that is technically valid under state law, and that is simultaneously the single most financially destructive document you have ever signed. They are not required to tell you about the Medicaid look-back. They are not required to tell you about the capital gains basis destruction. They are not a law firm. They owe you nothing but the paper. Right now, not after this video, not tonight. Right now, send this video to one retiree you care about, your sibling, your neighbor, your parents, someone who said last Thanksgiving, "I'm thinking about putting the kids on the house." That conversation is happening in living rooms across America this week. This bulletin might stop it. The structural villain here is not Kevin. Kevin was trying to protect his parents. The villain is a system that profits from ignorance, that earns revenue through a Medicaid estate recovery apparatus that collected over $700 million nationally in a single recent year, and that has zero incentive to explain the correct tools to you. The IRS does not send you a letter saying, "By the way, you just destroyed your step-up basis." Medicaid does not call to warn you about the look-back clock. The state of Ohio doesn't knock on the door until you are in a nursing home, and the money is already allocated somewhere it shouldn't be. Now here is what Gerald should have done. Here is what you should do. This is the payoff. Save this video to a playlist titled Retirement Survival Manual right now. Everything we're about to cover is something your estate attorney may not bring up unless you ask specifically, because they bill by the hour and complexity is their business model. A revocable living trust puts your house inside a legal entity you control completely during your lifetime. You can sell it, you can change the trustee, you can amend the document tomorrow morning. When you die, the home passes directly to your designated beneficiary, Kevin in Gerald's case, outside of probate, with zero court involvement, and critically, with a full stepped-up basis at death. Kevin inherits the house at its date of death value. If it's worth $420,000 when Gerald passes, Kevin's basis is $420,000. Kevin sells it for $420,000. Kevin owes the IRS $0 in capital gains. Here's the critical nuance. A revocable living trust does not protect the home from Medicaid estate recovery on its own. Because it is revocable, meaning you can pull the assets back out, Medicaid counts it as an available asset. Do not let anyone sell you a revocable trust as Medicaid protection. It is not. It is a probate avoidance tool and a basis preservation tool, both enormously valuable, not a Medicaid shield. State-level nuance. In Florida, the revocable trust pairs beautifully with the homestead exemption. Florida protects a primary residence from creditors during your lifetime, and a trust preserves that protection. In New Jersey, by contrast, revocable trusts receive no special creditor protection and must be carefully structured to avoid inadvertently triggering the estate tax on assets over $675,000. Know your state. If Medicaid protection is the goal, and it should be for anyone with a paid-off home, the tool is an Irrevocable Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, sometimes called an IMAPT or a Medicaid Asset Trust. Here is how it works. You transfer the home into the trust. You are no longer the legal owner of the home. The trust owns it. You retain the right to live in it for the rest of your life. That is called a retained life estate. And you retain the right to any income it produces. But because you've given up control, Medicaid counts it as transferred. The 5-year look-back clock starts the moment you transfer it. If you make it 5 years and 1 day without needing nursing home Medicaid benefits, that home is completely protected from estate recovery. The state cannot touch it. Kevin inherits it through the trust with a stepped-up basis intact under current IRS rules. You have executed a legal, documented, legitimate Medicaid protection strategy. The urgency here is mathematical. You need 5 clean years. If you are 68 today and you haven't started this clock, You are gambling with the most valuable asset in your estate. Every month you wait is 1 month closer to a medical event that starts the clock for you. Except when the state starts the clock, it runs backward against you, not forward for you. State-level nuance. In California, Medi-Cal and the state's Medicaid program overhauled its estate recovery rules in 2024, dramatically limiting recovery to only probate assets. A properly structured trust in California now offers significantly stronger protection than it did 2 years ago. In Ohio, where Gerald lives, recovery is still aggressive and extends to non-probate assets in some circumstances. Ohio is one of the hardest states in the nation. Florida, by contrast, exempts the homestead from Medicaid estate recovery entirely, making Florida residency itself a legitimate retirement planning strategy for high-net-worth families with significant real estate. Not everyone has 5 years. Not everyone can afford the drafting cost of a full irrevocable trust. Not everyone is willing to give up control of the home right now. For those people, particularly those in the narrow band where a full IMAPT isn't practical, the Lady Bird deed, also called an enhanced life estate deed, is a powerful middle ground tool. Here is how it works. You remain the full owner of the home during your lifetime. You can sell it, mortgage it, change your mind, nobody's permission required. When you die, the home automatically transfers to your named beneficiary, Kevin, outside of probate, with a full stepped-up basis, with no gift tax implications during your lifetime. And in most states that recognize it, Medicaid cannot count the transfer against you because you retained full control. The critical limitation: not all states recognize Lady Bird deeds. As of 2026, they are clearly recognized in Florida, Michigan, Texas, Vermont, and West Virginia. In Ohio, where Gerald lives, they are in a legal gray zone. Ohio does not have a specific Lady Bird deed statute. You can draft one, and some Ohio attorneys use them, but the Medicaid treatment is not as well established as in Florida or Michigan. In states like New York or California, you generally cannot use a Lady Bird deed. If you are in Florida, Michigan, or Texas, and you own a paid-off home, and you have not executed a Lady Bird deed, stop this video after it ends and call an estate attorney today. This is one of the cleanest, lowest cost, most effective tools in the entire retirement protection arsenal, and almost nobody talks about it. If your estate is north of $1.2 million, if you're looking at a potential estate tax exposure in addition to the Medicaid problem, there is a fourth tool worth understanding: the Qualified Personal Residence Trust, or QPRT. You transfer the home into the QPRT for a fixed term, say 10 years. You continue to live in it. At the end of the term, ownership passes to Kevin at a significantly discounted gift tax value because the IRS discounts the value of the gift based on your retained interest. You've moved a potentially appreciating asset out of your taxable estate at a fraction of its actual value. The risk? If you die before the term ends, the full value of the home comes back into your estate. So QPRTs work best for people in their early to mid-60s with good health who want to start the clock on a long-term transfer strategy. For a 71-year-old like Gerald, a 10-year QPRT is probably too aggressive, but a 5 or 6 year term with careful actuarial planning may still make sense. State nuance. In New Jersey, which has a separate state estate tax with a $675,000 exemption, well below the federal threshold, a QPRT can provide meaningful state estate tax savings on top of the federal benefits. This is a strategy your New Jersey CPA may not bring up unless you ask. Let me bring Gerald back one more time. Gerald Hoffmann still lives in that Akron colonial. Patrice still makes the pierogi on Sundays. The gray Silverado is still in the driveway. And as of this recording, it is June 2026. Gerald has just under 18 months left on his Medicaid look-back clock. His attorney is currently evaluating whether to attempt a transfer into an irrevocable Medicaid trust now and restart the clock entirely, or to wait out the remaining look-back period and hope no medical crisis interrupts it. That is the decision tree Gerald is living with right now, because a $199 document service and a well-intentioned son set a trap that will take years to fully escape. You have a window. If you are between 62 and 70 right now, the 5-year Medicaid protection clock is your most urgent financial task, not your Roth conversion, not your Social Security timing. Because every tool we discussed, the Irrevocable Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, the Lady Bird deed, the QPRT, Every single one of them requires time to become effective. You cannot buy time retroactively. You cannot start the clock after the ambulance arrives. If you are already past 70, like Gerald, the calculus changes, but the urgency does not go away. A ladybird deed in a favorable state can still protect the home with no look-back period. A Medicaid-compliant annuity can shelter liquid assets quickly. There are moves left, but they require an attorney who knows what they are doing, not a document prep website, not a YouTube comment section, not a well-meaning son. The archive is here. This channel publishes early warning bulletins, often within 48 hours of a significant IRS revenue ruling, a state Medicaid policy change, or a court decision that affects a state recovery law. Subscribe. Hit the bell. When the next rule changes, you will know about it here before your financial advisor does. This is the kind of information the system does not want concentrated in one place. It prefers you confused. It prefers you acting on Thanksgiving dinner advice. It prefers you logging into a $199 deed service at midnight because a Facebook post told you it was the smart move. Be Gerald's attorney who showed him the trap before he walked into it. Don't be the $199 document service that handed him the map. Cite your sources. IRS Publication 523 governs the home sale exclusion and basis rules. Read it. Section 1917B of the Social Security Act is the federal law authorizing Medicaid estate recovery. Read that too. Both are free on irs.gov and ssa.gov. Your CPA should know both by heart. If they don't, find a new CPA. I'll see you in the next bulletin.